Hey guys, welcome back. So you can see the old road warrior is back in the shop here. It's midsummer here in Missouri and it is hot. It's probably I think this past week it's been in the upper 90s. They're looking at heat indexes over 100, and this thing picked now for the air conditioner to quit working. So I've done a little bit of looking, little research on what I think is going on, and I think I've come to a conclusion. So let's show you what we've got. I've got my gauges hooked up here, and if you don't know how these work or what they are, basically it's just two separate gauges on a manifold with hoses, and I've got the blue side, the low side, connected to the low side refrigerant line, which is down here on the fender well kind of deal here right in front of the engine, and then the high pressure side, the red side, is connected to this port here by the strut tower. So these are kind of nice because they're idiot proof. You can only hook them up one way, so you don't have to worry about anything there. And then this yellow hose is just like a charge line for you can hook up your vacuum pump or refrigerant. So what I've got right now is on the low side I've got pressure about 90 psi, and on the high side about the same. So these two gauges are on two different scales because there should be a lot more pressure obviously on the high side than the low side. Now, I don't know a lot about air conditioning. I know generally how they work, and I'm familiar with all the components and stuff, but I've not done a lot of work with them. This will be the first time I've replaced a compressor like this. So I'm kind of learning as I go too. But what I've got going on is I've got no cold air inside. That was the first obvious tip off, right? So then the first thing I went to check was to make sure that the air conditioning compressor was turning. So I went down here, and you can't see it very good, but while the engine's running you can watch and make sure the inside of that clutch is spinning. And mine was, which I was a little confused about, because I thought maybe I was just low on refrigerant, and if you're low on refrigerant, there's a safety switch that keeps them from kicking on. So anyway, I also went ahead and checked the relay just to make sure. I pulled it in and out, or pulled it out and put it back in to make sure that I could make the clutch cycle back and forth, and that all seemed to be working okay. So that's when I decided to go ahead and buy these gauges. These were just a set from Harbor Freight. I think they're like $150 or $130, something like that. And I just wanted them so that I'd have a set around. You can rent these at O'Reilly's and AutoZone, so you wouldn't have to spend any money on that. But I hooked it up, noticed that I had pressure, and then whenever I start the car and turn the air conditioning on, basically the pressure doesn't change much. It just kind of flutters. So we'll take a look and show you what we've got there. So with the engine running, on the inside I've got the air conditioning turned on, but I pulled the AC clutch relay. So I'll try and show you what happens as soon as it kicks on. So you can see our pressures are pretty much balanced. Obviously the gauges are in the wrong spot, but are in different positions, but they read the same pressure. Now if I can do this without messing up the shot. So you can see the low side kind of took a dive there to like 80, 85, and then settled out around 90, and then the high side only came up to like 95, almost 100. And this is even acting a little bit different than it did the other day whenever I first hooked these gauges up. The first time I pulled down to about 85 or so, and then the pressure on the high side was just slightly over 100, and it would just sit there and kind of bounce a little bit. And so from a little research that I've done, essentially the fact that the gauges don't move very much, I mean, from what I understand, we should have a 30 or 40 psi at least pressure drop on the low side, and then the opposite on the high side, maybe even more. So the fact that we're not getting much of a pressure change tells me that the air compressor is not moving much refrigerant. because it should be pulling from the low side, which would drop the low side pressure, and compressing it and pushing it into the high side, which would raise the high side pressure. And essentially that's not happening. I did a little bit of research, and this is a variable displacement compressor, so it's just kind of a fuel savings type deal. It limits how much power you need when you're idling or whenever there's not much demand for cooling. So from some knowledge I've got from working on hydraulic pumps in the past, I've looked it up, and they work fairly similarly. They've got what's called a swash plate, and that changes how much displacement that the pump puts out. It's a piston pump, and it changes how far those pistons move, that swash plate does. And that is controlled by some kind of control valve. In a hydraulic system, it's just a spring and plunger, and it's like a pressure relief valve. But in these, it's an electric solenoid. And this has got that electric solenoid, so I'm assuming that that is bad. I did some research, and I cannot find one for this compressor. A few years newer, the newer generation of Cruzes that started in like 2017, you can get them for that. And even for a 2011, and for some the 2011 through 16 Cruzes with the 1.8, you can get them. But for whatever reason, this one's different. And I did quite a bit of research and couldn't find where any of that would be compatible. So a kit to replace the compressor on this car through Rock Auto is like $260, which isn't exactly cheap, but it's not terribly expensive either. So that's the way I opted to go. So we're going to start with replacing this compressor. It also came with a TXV valve and a desiccant pack. So we'll go through all that as we do this. But we're going to start by getting that compressor out, which means I'm going to get this thing up on jack stands, and I'm going to reclaim the refrigerant in a law-abiding manner. So I've got the car up in the air now. Went ahead and pulled the belt off and unbolted the refrigerant lines from the compressor. Rolled under the car, and I think I found our issue. So this is the bottom of the AC compressor, and I don't know if you noticed, but I think I was right about that solenoid, that control solenoid not working. See the end of those wires there? And these, I have no idea what happened, but it's just gone. Also, what got me started looking at that was I noticed some wires being bare right there, and so I just started looking around, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not even there. I have no idea what happened. I took this, there was a kind of a splash guard belly pan thing underneath here. I took it off. I don't see any wires laying around. I can only assume a mouse or something ate them off, I guess. So as you can see by the oil dripping down whenever I took those lines off, some of the oil ran out of the compressor. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these connectors off and remake this wire, fix that wire, and then we're going to go ahead and charge it up and see if it works. I mean, worst comes to worst, if it doesn't work, I'm out the refrigerant that I put in it. But if it does work, we're going to keep running it, and I can return that $270 air compressor set. So this connector, these wires are not great. Whatever it was got to that too. So looks like maybe I could get this connector apart. I may try to do that and see if I could repair those wires too. So here's what I ended up with. I got this elbow connector off, so this is the connector that should stay on the car. These are the two wires that were still there, but chewed most of the way through. So one ended up breaking off when I was trying to get this connector open, and then the other one it was almost cut through, so I just went ahead and cut it off to finish it off. And then I'll strip these back, and then I'll solder it back on the car. And then this is just almost kind of a cover for that, so I should be able to put that all back together. Now the other connectors I've got here, this one is what would come on the AC compressor. So this one plugs in here, and then it runs over to this one, and this is the wire that was missing. So on this one, both of them, the wires were cut basically flush with the end of the connector, and this one I was able to depin. So these ends go through here and snap up in. I don't have a depinning tool, but I was able to take a pick like this, and if you can see that at all, go into this hole, push it in, and then pull the wire out the back. So I got both of those out because they were so short, like basically cut off flush with the end here, and I wasn't going to be able to solder anything. This one had essentially the same issue, but these are a little more difficult to depin without a depinning tool. The depinning tool has got to go down in there in a little slot, and I figured I would tear it up worse with the pick. So there was a kind of a big piece on the back of this connector that didn't look like it was going to affect the function. So what I ended up doing is just cutting that off, and that got me enough wire exposed to be able to solder, and then I'll just tape that up. But the clip where it goes on to the AC compressor, and of course the rest of the connector is fine. So it's not ideal, but it's gonna work in this case. So now what I'm gonna do is, on these connectors, I've got the stripped wire put in there, and then I'm just gonna solder those just to make sure they don't come apart. I'll get it snapped back in this connector, and then the other end of these will solder to this. Unfortunately, the only wire I've got on hand is white, so both of them are going to be white. They were originally red and black. So on this one you can still see the colors. When I took this one apart, I took a picture of it ahead of time to make sure I kept track of which wire was in which hole, so that would be important. So I apparently accidentally got rosin core solder, so we'll see if we can make this work. Looks like it's doing pretty good. Basically just trying to make sure I don't get a big glob of solder on there that will affect how this goes into the connector. So I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. And I'm going to put a piece of electrical tape around this just to kind of protect that wire, keep them from getting together. Again, keeping it small so it'll fit in that connector as best I can. That one got a little wadded up. Hopefully I can get it in there. So I'll try it first.
try this other one. That one went in there good. Alright, I got both of those put in there. I had to strip the tape off that one and put it back on, but a little smaller. And then I'll take and just do a round or two to help support those wires, since I don't have the little gaskets that would go in there to put back in. And then to lock those in there, there's this little piece that snaps back in. So that connector should be good to go. Then I'll just solder these two to here, and we'll be more or less repaired until we get this wire fixed on the car. So here's what we ended up with the repaired little wiring harness here. I went ahead and wrapped it in tape just to help protect the wires a little bit. I'm assuming that it was mice that did this, so I don't know if the electrical tape will deter them or attract them, but it's there. Makes me feel a little better. And then, so this connector, I got those wires stripped back. This little elbow just snaps on afterwards. So I'll crawl into the car, see if I can get this soldered onto those other wires without burning myself, and then we'll go to putting the refrigerant back in. So the trick will be if I can do this without dripping any hot solder on me. I even put safety glasses on for this. Success number one. Alright, there, that's fixed. That elbow went on pretty well, and a guy could have put butt connectors or something down here, but I like to solder this stuff. Just, I don't want to have to be coming down here and chasing this again. So with that being fixed, then this should slide on there, and we can plug that back in. Oh, maybe the other way. Yeah, that way. And then we've got plenty of wire here, and that side goes like that. Might tape this up out of the way. Now, that's not the prettiest thing I've ever seen, but that should work. Now it'll just be a matter of going back up to the top side and redoing all the stuff that I undid. So about the only thing that I had undone was I had these air conditioning lines removed. So I got those put back on from when the refrigerant was evacuated. I did have the oil still, so I dumped it back in the line. And then now, before we go to fill this back up, I'm going to pull a vacuum on it. So I've got my gauges hooked back up in the same spots, and then the yellow line coming off the center, I've got that attached to a vacuum pump. I rented this one from O'Reilly's. I didn't really want to spend $150 just to have one around, at least not yet. So we've got all the knobs open, and then we'll kick it on. and see if it starts pulling a vacuum on anything.
I think they recommend for you to have this on vacuum for like 30 minutes or something like that, just to make sure you get all the water vapor and all that kind of stuff out. So I've got a couple other things to do, so I'm gonna let this sit and run and make sure we get a vacuum pulled on it, and then we'll be ready to fill it back up. Okay, so we've had the vacuum pump on, and I shut the vacuum pump off, closed the valves, and we've been sitting here holding vacuum for quite a while now. So I'm confident that we don't have any leaks. So now normally you would take this yellow hose from the gauge set and connect a can to it. I'm gonna pull something a little bit different, because at 2 different times I have purchased cans and hoses in an emergency situation, thinking I was gonna fix air conditioning in the AutoZone parking lot. This one was bought for this problem, and then found out that that wasn't the issue. This one was for a different vehicle at some point, but they both still have refrigerant in them, and the hoses are on them, and the cans are punctured, so I can't take them off and connect them to my yellow hose. So what I'm gonna have to do is unclip my low side hose from my gauge set. Theoretically, vacuum should stay on the system, and then I can just plug on this hose and at least get a can in there or 2, and then see where we go from there. Okay, so that correctly bottomed the gauge out, and ordinarily you would want to put this refrigerant in while the car's running and the air conditioner's on, but I just want to get these cans put in, and obviously it should hold this can easily, and then we'll start it up and we'll watch our pressures to put the rest in. Okay, so the one can got us up to about 80 psi. I think that'll be enough for the compressor to kick on. So I'm going to start the car, turn on the air conditioning, and see if it'll pull some more in. So with the car on, you can hear my fans kicked on. We're already in a better position. So we're about 150 psi on the high side, and then that gauge is unhooked. So we come over here, and we're just under 30 psi over here on the low side. So see if we can get to draw some more of this in. I bet the air inside is starting to cool down a little bit. All right, so we're still taking refrigerant. I've got the second can on now. It's taking it, but it's going a little slow. So I did a little online research real quick, and for an ambient temperature of 90 to 95 degrees, it looks like R134A should run about, I'm going to shoot for 50 psi on the low side. It gives a range like 45 to 55, and then 250 to 300 on the high side. So I'm going to shoot for around 275. Right now, we are running about, if I can get the light out of the way, just under 200 psi on the high side, and the low side it's hard to tell, because when you're adding refrigerant, the pressure in the can affects the pressure reading. So but we're running somewhere just around 40 psi, so we're going to keep adding refrigerant and see if we can get the pressures right. So we've got nice cold air coming out of the vents, and we got the pressures pretty close to where we wanted them. Not quite though. So where we ended up is we're just a little over 35 pounds on the low side, and probably about 360 or so, around 310 or so on the high side. So the ideal range for 95 degrees, which I've got a thermostat out here in the shop and it's 94, the ideal range would be 40 to 50 on the low side and like 275 to 300, I think, on the high side. So we got it close. Those two pressures having a bigger difference between them kind of indicates that there's some kind of blockage maybe in the system, which could be, I don't know what the pressures were before. There could be a blockage in the system of some sort. The desiccant could be a little plugged. It's hard to know, especially with me having the system cracked open like that. So, but I think this is going to be close enough to run. So this project ended up not being at all what I thought it was going to be. I guess I should have got under there and looked ahead of time, but why would you until you were getting ready to take the compressor off? I knew what was happening. The compressor wasn't functioning correctly, which I was 100% correct about. And I have no idea why those wires disappeared. So there's a wind guard belly pan deal that goes under that, so that was covered up. It's not like it got hooked on anything and ripped off or anything like that. It was working fine one day and it quit the next. So overall, pretty good deal. My $270 repair ended up turning into a $27 repair, and that was because my soldering iron disappeared. So I just went ahead and bought another one instead of spending too much time looking for it. So anyway, glad we got it taken care of. That'll help reduce the sweat a little bit. I can start getting some better gas mileage in this on the way to work instead of driving my truck. But hope it helped a little bit. Again, not the video that I thought it was going to be, but that's how it works whenever you're working on vehicles. Thanks for watching, like, and subscribe.